Part 20. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 191. Haha, this is called the soul-chasing electric talisman. Have you ever seen a talisman? Frog in the well. Huangsheng suddenly sneered. Read. Even after losing like this, he still did not put down his posture, but became more ruthless and ferocious, and even still wanted to compete with Wu Yu to see who was more noble. The soul-chasing electric talisman seemed to have an eye, staring at Wu Yu. Wu Yu had a creepy feeling. He knew that once the talisman was activated, he would either die or be injured. Huangsheng's magic power was igniting the soul-chasing electric talisman. At that moment, Wu Yu reacted. The fingers turned into swords, and in both hands, two nascent yin and yang swords surged instantly, one piercing Huangsheng's head, and the other flying off Huangsheng's arms. Huangsheng still underestimated Wu Yu's speed. Wu Yu's judgment of death is very keen. At this moment, Huangsheng brought a death crisis to Wu Yu. Simply cutting off his arm was not enough. Only by killing him in a short moment could the pursuit be stopped. Soul Electricity Talisman. Whoosh. In just an instant, the activation of the talisman was cut off by Wu Yu, and the flying arm was sucked in by Wu Yu. Among them, the soul-chasing electric talisman fell into Wu Yu's hands. Seeing the violent appearance of the soul-chasing electric talisman, he only missed in an instant. Wu Yu probably would not be able to escape the fate of death. It's really scary. The foundation of Xuanhuan immortal sect may be reflected in this talisman. However, Wu Yu had no choice but to kill Huangsheng in order to prevent him from activating the soul-chasing electric talisman. Huangsheng was hit by the Chus Hung Yin Yang Qi sword, groaned, and died in front of Wu Yu's eyes. He was still a step slower. In the game between life and death, Wu Yu had no time to think about the consequences of killing Huangsheng. The only thing he could do now was to put the soul-chasing electric talisman in the samurai bag. Everyone present could clearly see the horror of the soul-chasing electric talisman, and they also knew that Wu Yu's last move was a helpless one. Although, he did want to destroy him. However, when everyone saw Huangsheng's death, they all felt horrified for a moment. Even Lan Huayun was so frightened that her face turned pale and she almost cried. Huangsheng, are you dead? Wan Tianyugzio was in a daze. Now he was stimulated and woke up. Although he felt happy when he saw Huangsheng's body, he was even more worried because Wu Yu was trying to. He had just come this far, and now, Wu Yu's fate was uncertain. Wu Yu, run away quickly, the further away the better, Su Yanli said with a pale face after realizing. Perhaps, we can hope that Zhang Futu will not be able to catch him. For a moment, everyone was in a state of confusion. Even Lan Huayun panicked, completely losing his mind, and his mind went blank. In fact, Wu Yu was also thinking at this time. He looked around and thought, for Zhang Futu, the Bibo Mountains should be very small. We have been in a stalemate here for such a long time. He should have noticed it long ago. If he wants to stop the fighting or even save Huangsheng, he should no problem. But in fact, he didn't show up. At this time, Feng Shui appeared. When he saw this scene, his face paled a lot. He looked at Wu Yu again, his eyes condensed, and he growled, "What are you waiting for? Let's go quickly. Walk." He knew very well that now that Huangsheng was dead, leaving quickly before Zhang Futu came would be the only way to survive. As for who would bear Zhang Futu's wrath, it would definitely be them. One person does the work and the other takes responsibility. You go. Wu Yu's tone was calm, but he had already made a decision in his heart. This matter cannot be involved with others. No, junior brother, I should be responsible for this. Wan Tianyugzio struggled. I'm sorry for you, get out of here, Feng Shui roared, and he struggled even more. He originally wanted to send Wu Yu to a wider world, but now, such a big thing has happened, don't talk about sending Wu Yu now. Wu Yu is gone. With so many people present, I wonder who else can survive. Wu Yu took a deep breath and said, I killed the person, you don't have to, just leave quickly. If you leave, I can deal with it better. However, he knew very well that he must face the pagoda now, and it was even possible that no one could leave. At this moment, a faint voice came from behind, it's so late, where are you going? One sentence is enough to be creepy. He appeared here out of thin air. When Wu Yu turned around, the pagoda stood behind him, like an invisible person. In other words, he might have been here a long time ago, but Wu Yu didn't see him. Senior brother Zhang, Feng Shui and Lan Huayun were also frightened. This was undoubtedly the most dangerous time. No one knew what would happen now. Wu Yu looked at Zhang Futu and saw that although he was standing next to Huang Sheng's body, his expression was not much different from usual. His mood and anger could not be guessed by anyone present. Wu Yu was determined in his heart and said, Zhang Jianxian, Huang Sheng insulted me, I fought with him, defeated him and let him live, but he still wanted to use the talisman to harm me, so I had no choice but to kill him. Huang Sheng is Zhang Jianxian's disciple, and killing Huang Sheng is my own business and has nothing to do with anyone else. Sometimes fate is like this. Some challenges must be met, but they will definitely lead to disastrous consequences. This is not surprising, and it is impossible to dodge. Until now, Wu Yu can only give it a try. He was actually very calm at heart. I see Zhang Jianxian circled around Huang Sheng's body several times. The scary thing was that this was clearly his disciple, but there was no trace of sadness in Zhang Futu's eyes. Others were frightened. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Every movement and expression of that pagoda can stir up a storm in their hearts. After watching for a while, Zhang Futu stared at Wu Yu, met Wu Yu's eyes, and said, he is my disciple. You can only be regarded as a preliminary disciple at best. Why do you have the courage to fight with him? Wu Yu's tone was firm and he replied, I consider myself stronger than him, and I can't stand him talking nonsense in front of me and humiliating me. Such an answer made Feng Shui so frightened that he broke into a cold sweat. Zhang Futu didn't seem to be angry now, but Wu Yu's words like this would probably make him angry. Zhang Futu asked again, I am behind him. If you dare to attack him or even kill him in the end, do you not take me seriously? Wu Yu shook his head and said, I think Huang Sheng has evil intentions, has no talent for the Dao, bullies the weak, is self-righteous, has no ambition to pursue the immortal path, and is not worthy of his status as Zhang Jianxian's disciple. I think Zhang Jianxian definitely doesn't like this person. I have absolutely no intention of not taking you seriously. Zhang Futu asked again, don't you dare to speculate on my thoughts, or you are afraid that I will kill you on the spot. Wu Yu replied, absolutely not, I just think Zhang Jianxian has a love for talents. I am more talented than Huang Sheng, and I am more pure than him. Although I don't have the golden elixir, I am better than Huang Sheng. If Huang Sheng insists on having you between me and him, make a choice, I think you should choose me. Haha, Zhang Futu laughed. It's really interesting. Are you brave enough to sophistry? Zhang Futu walked around Wu Yu with his hands behind his back. He was probably very interested in Wu Yu. However, Huang Sheng has repeatedly taken advantage of my prestige to do mischief, and he only likes to steal women. I brought him out this time to kill him. You can do it for me. At this point, Zhang Futu's voice changed, and there was a feeling of darkness. Does he really want to kill Huang Sheng? I can't believe this, but at this time, he said this on the spot, which means that he may not punish Wu Yu, and may even let Wu Yu replace Huang Sheng. Hearing this, Feng Xiya and the others were confused. Wu Yu. The sword fairy turned to Wu Yu and shouted loudly. Zhang Jianxian, please speak. Wu Yu raised his head. He felt that he didn't have to die this time. This swordsman actually showed some appreciation for him as he expected. Therefore, it seems that he is deliberately creating a good impression to make Wu Yu respect him. Perhaps, he really didn't expect that Wu Yu's combat power was so terrifying, that he could defeat Huang Sheng, and crush him. When Huang Sheng and I start fighting, will he be there to watch the battle? Only in that way will he have a clearer understanding of Wu Yu's combat power. Just as he had this idea in his mind, the sword fairy's eyes flashed, and a sword light pierced Wu Yu's eyes, shocking his soul. He said, "Wu Yu, since you think you are stronger than Huang Sheng, then I will give you this opportunity. From today on, you are my fourth disciple, Zhang Futu. There are 3 senior disciples in front of you. As for Huang Sheng, he was originally ranked 4th, but if he fails to live up to his expectations, then he will not be the person he is. From now on, you will be the 4th disciple." 4th. Saying these words, Feng Shui's wish was fulfilled. Of course, Wu Yu was not happy in his heart. He just wanted to use Zhang Futu as a springboard to go to the Xuanhuan Immortal section. However, the only master he recognized was Feng Shui, not this Futu, especially at this moment. In front of the snowy cliff, Zhu Feng Shui didn't care, but Wu Yu did. "Thank you, master." It was a little difficult to say these 3 words, but Zhang Futu obviously understood that he was nervous. Wu Yu is a little depressed. From now on, he has to get along with this person. Who knows when it will end? Very good, since Huang Sheng is dead, don't waste time, pack up quickly, and come with me back to the Xuanhuan Immortal sect. Wu Yu, starting from today, you are really reaching the sky in one step. Zhang Futu laughed loudly. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 192. Chapter 191 Divine Eye and 7-Color Sword. Wu Yu had nothing to prepare. 520 Novel Network Xuanhuan, K, N, S, H, U, C, C. Everything that needs to be cleaned up and goodbyes that need to be said has been done. I wanted to go to Sun Wudao's tomb tonight, but now the location of his tomb has become a spiritual energy fountain. In addition, Wu Yu knew that if this pagoda stayed with the Tongtian sword sect for a moment longer, Feng Xia and the others would be in greater danger. In this case, since everything is settled, it is better to leave early. So, he made a decision and said, "Everything is ready, we can go out now." "Oh, don't you feel nostalgic for this place for a while?" Zhang Futu smiled. "No. There is no difference between today and tomorrow." Feng Xia and the others can naturally understand what Wu Yu is thinking. This time Zhang Futu miraculously did not get angry, which is already considered a miracle among miracles. "We say goodbye today, and we will definitely see each other tomorrow." Wu Yu walked up to Feng Xia and the others and bowed to everyone. "Don't worry, I will make Yuxiu recover." Feng Xia looked back at Wanchen Yuxiu and said. With his words, Wu Yu felt relieved. He bowed again, and the thousands of words in his heart were all turned into gratitude to Feng Xia. It was him who saved him, gave him shelter, and even humbled him, just to send him to a more glorious holy land of immortality. Goodbye. There was deep reluctance in his heart, but he understood better that the more important thing is to cultivate the Great Road. That is the best reward for Feng Xia, the Bibo Mountains, and Sun Wudao. Zhang Futu had a strange look in his eyes and didn't say much. Instead, he waved slightly, and an invisible sword gang appeared under his feet. The sword gang was very wide, vibrating and roaring in the air. In fact, it wouldn't be a problem to bring Wu Yu with him, but he had no intention of letting Wu Yu stand on it. Call. Zhang Futu flew up into the clouds and missed. If he didn't follow him, he might not be able to catch up. Wu Yu quickly took out the black and white Taoist swords and condensed them into sword gangs. He stood on it and took one last look at the people of the Tongtian sword section. They also held it in their mouths. With tears of reluctance, I stared at Wu Yu tightly, and I could only look at him a few more times. Read a book, 1. Let's go. Wu Yu didn't look back, and jumped away. In the blink of an eye, he flew up to the sky. The blue mountains under him suddenly became smaller and disappeared in the blink of an eye. This means that it is no longer easy to come back. However, the man has his ambitions in all directions. Rush. Zhang Futu was looming in front of him. Wu Yu had no time to take care of other things and could only try his best to catch up with him. Zhang Futu maintained a speed that required a maximum pursuit. At least for now, Wu Yu could only chase him wildly. Otherwise, I am afraid Zhang Futu will disappear like this. At this time, Zhang Futu meant the immortal road ahead to Wu Yu. Once lost, the path to immortality will be cut off. Are you testing me? Looking at the pagoda from behind, Wu Yu's eyes were actually cold. He was not afraid of this level of provocation. Flying with his sword consumed his mana. However, Wu Yu's powerful heavenly magic, the harmony of yin and yang, and his mana regeneration were rapid. At least for a long time, Wu Yu followed Zhang Futu. 1 day, 2 days. 10 days have passed. No matter how fast the recovery of mana is, it is quite tiring to maintain such a god. After all, he is still in a state of consumption, and there will always be a time when it is exhausted. As of today, his mana is exhausted, his face is pale, and he is already shaking. I can hardly hold it anymore. However, Zhang Futu still had no intention of losing weight. As he watched, he kept shrinking in front of his eyes. During these days, Wu Yu was constantly on the road, flying through the clouds, and barely had time to look at these magnificent mountains and rivers. Fight, even though he was a little dizzy, he was still pushing himself to the limit, chasing the figure in front of him. He just doesn't want to admit defeat. Especially, surrendering in front of this pagoda. Sometimes, the more powerless and even awe-inspiring Feng Shui was towards this person, the more Wu Yu felt he hated him, and he was unwilling to give in. 1. K. A. N. S. H. U. He was even a little dizzy, and the shadow in his eyes was getting smaller and smaller. This pagoda was not polite to him at all. Suddenly, Zhang Futu disappeared. Wu Yu was shocked. Even if he escapes from my sight, it will take some time. It is impossible for him to disappear suddenly. Where did that go? Wu Yu hurriedly moved forward, observing all directions, and suddenly thought that Zhang Futu might have gone down. After all, there has to be time to rest. In this way, Wu Yu also descended from the clouds. When he fell from the clouds and mist, he was shocked to see the spreading mountains at his feet, like several divine dragons intertwined together. The aura rising above them was very comfortable. Knowing that this is a place where spiritual energy is born is a kind of paradise. This was the first popular place Wu Yu saw after leaving Tongtian Sword Sect. As he headed west, there were almost no people along the way. Zhang Futu must have entered this paradise. Wu Yu said no more and followed him in. As soon as he entered the scope of this sect, Wu Yu clearly felt that the spiritual energy contained in this random sect was actually higher than that after the spiritual energy surge. The blue waves and mountains are even richer. This is just a random place I encountered along the way. At normal speed, it would take about 20 days to get here. Speaking of which, the Tongtian Sword Sect and the Immortal Kingdom over there are indeed remote places. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. As soon as he landed from the sky, he heard an unusual noise in one of the places. He hurried over. Along the way, monks kept appearing in the mountains and palaces at his feet. They raised their heads and looked at Wu Yu in horror and astonishment. To them, he was definitely a stranger. No guest. Along the way, the palaces and pavilions were more majestic and resplendent than those of the Tongtian sword section. They were mostly golden. The key was that many of the disciples had a stern sword intent. Unexpectedly, this was a sword cultivating sect. In the blink of an eye, Wu Yu crossed many mountains and rivers with his sword, and a huge white jade square appeared in front of him. The white jade was pure and flawless, shining with dazzling light under the sunlight, slightly shaking Wu Yu. After he got used to it, he saw that there were two groups of people in Bio's square. The group on the left was wearing golden sword robes. There were more people. They were obviously from this section. The other group was wearing fiery red ones. Jianbao is actually a swordsman disciple, but he obviously does not belong to this sect. The two groups of people don't know what to do here. The conflict between the two groups is not obvious, it's a bit like a flow. Wu Yu saw at a glance that Zhang Futu came down and stood in the center of a group of people. He looked indifferently and looked at the two groups of people from left to right with silent eyes. Nearest to Zhang Futu, on one left and one on the right, are two middle-aged monks, one male and one female. The female is wearing a golden sword robe, short and sharp, and has a handsome appearance. The man is rougher, with a big beard, an ugly face but gentle eyes. The man was holding a psychic weapon, which was a long sword. The blade was divided into 7 sections. Starting from the hilt, there were 7 colors in total: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. In each color, there were a flame array. This psychic weapon is so hot that it burns with 7 colors of flames. The woman was holding a golden sword, and there was an eye on the hilt of the golden sword. The eye was moving and looking at people as if it were alive. But at this time, the eyes in the golden sword looked at Zhang Futu with obvious fear. "Who are you?" "We, the Kunshan sword sect and the Red Flame sword sect, are holding a monastic exchange conference here. Why did you come here without authorization and disturb us?" The woman's voice was hoarse and very powerful. Wu Yu didn't know its realm, but it was at least the golden elixir Dao realm. "I'm afraid it's stronger than Feng Xia." The rough man also said, "I think you just entered by mistake, so you should leave quickly. Our two factions are still going on." Wu Yu didn't know why Zhang Futu came down to disturb them. If he just needed to rest, he could rest anywhere. There was no need to be so high profile. Unexpectedly, Zhang Futu said calmly, "What a coincidence. I think your two psychic magical weapons are good and suitable for my new disciple. In this way, if you keep these two magical weapons, I will let you two a way out." Zhang Futu's words were really shocking. As soon as he said these words, everyone present burst into laughter. The female sect leader was extremely angry and said, "Your Excellency's cultivation is indeed good, but you have to follow the rules. You are not a ghost cultivator, how can you cheat in broad daylight?" The leader of the Scarlet Flame Sword sect said, "This kind of behavior will make our colleagues feel ashamed. But we too are not easy to bully. So much nonsense." What Wu Yu was worried about happened. Zhang Futu really didn't have much patience. He suddenly waved his hand and made a stroke in the void. Suddenly, before the leader of the Red Flame Sword sect could react, his head fell to the ground. Dead. The divine sword burning with 7 color flames fell down like this, and was then held in Zhang Futu's hand. He took action too quickly. At that moment, such an incredible thing took everyone's breath away. The female sect leader of the Kunshan sword sect turned pale with fright, quickly backed away, and screamed, "Who are you, and what force do you belong to? I am willing to give this golden sword of divine eyes to you, and I hope you will keep me a way out." As she spoke, she threw out the golden eye of divine sword, and the psychic magical weapon instantly fell into Zhang Futu's hands. "Got it?" The rest of the people were so frightened that they trembled and retreated in panic. "I am Xuanhuan Immortal section," Zhang Futu said with a smile. "Ah!" For a moment, everyone knelt on the ground in an uproar. Perhaps this name brought them deeper awe. Originally, they wanted to find someone to help them take revenge, but when they heard this name, all they had left in their hearts was fear. "Send it over earlier, otherwise you don't have to die. Zhang Futu looked indifferent. At this time, he faced Wu Yu, pointed the two psychic magic weapons at Wu Yu, and asked, by the way, what is the name of this one that is burning? The female sect leader trembled and said, Seven-color divine fire sword. Oh! Wu Yu, from now on, they are yours. Zhang Futu threw the two divine swords towards Wu Yu. Should I take it? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Feng-Qing Yang. Chapter 193. /U003C. -go-/U003E. Zhang Futu, this is a blatant thief, and his behavior is no different from that of a ghost cultivator. 520 Novel Network. Wu Yu knew very well the rules of this world of cultivating immortals, and knew that the laws of the world were all about the weak and the strong, but he believed that everyone should have a ruler of conscience in their hearts. At least the leader of the Red Flame Sword sect has no enmity with Zhang Futu. He has a high level of cultivation and can be robbed. There is no need to interrupt the path of immortality and take people's lives. Therefore, the psychic magic weapon that Zhang Futu obtained like this was treated as a gift to Wu Yu, who had just taken him as his teacher. Under the scorching sun, Zhang Futu had a smile on his face. His long white hair shines in the rays of the scorching sun. Everyone around them knelt on the ground, frightened into silence by the words Xuanhuan Immortal Sect. Wu Yu suddenly remembered that when Feng Shui gave him the demon-subduing stick, he didn't have a suitable one on hand, so he borrowed the demon-subduing stick from Elder Muji, but gave Elder Muji something of equal value. Although the world is chaotic, Feng Shui has his own right path in his heart. Although Zhang Futu comes from Xuanhuan Immortal Sect, has a high status and powerful strength, Wu Yu cannot agree with his desire to cultivate Taoism. Dang dang. In an instant, the Divine Eye Golden Sword and the seven-color Divine Fire Sword were inserted into the ground at Wu Yu's feet. One of them continued to emit sharp golden sword energy. When the Divine Eye turned, the place it saw was basically covered in metallic energy. The ground beneath his feet turned from white jade to gold. It is estimated that it will be a piece of real gold soon. As for the Divine Fire Sword that has 7 sections and is divided into 7 colors, its flames are monstrous, forming a rainbow-like flame, light and shadow. Under the burning of the flames, the white jade ground under the feet is also melting into a pool of white water. It is undeniable that these two psychic magic weapons are excellent, but Zhang Futu understands the Taoism that Wu Yu has practiced roughly and his physical attributes. 1 gold and 1 fire are perfect for Wu Yu. It seems that Zhang Futu knows me better than I thought. He has even asked about the yin-yang sword wheel. This thought flashed through Wu Yu's heart. How to deal with this pagoda? Wu Yu had a certain plan in mind. As long as this pagoda doesn't touch your own bottom line, you can't conflict with him for the time being. To be an enemy of such a strong person is to be a fool. Feng Shui hoped that Wu Yu could use his power. The only way is that in the future, if I can surpass him, I must teach him how to behave. Wu Yu believed that he had the inheritance of an immortal, but lacked the firepower and a better cultivation environment. Zhang Futu was his next target to surpass. Although I still don't know anything about Dan Dao realm, I still have this kind of confidence. Wu Yu, it is said that you already have 2 psychic instruments, but I believe you can refine 4. I will give you 1 day to become familiar with these 2 psychic instruments. Zhang Futu's words carried a strong command. After finishing speaking, he sat cross-legged in the middle of the white jade square, closing his eyes and meditating. Without him, no one in the 2 sects dared to move, let alone be powerful. No one even took care of the body of the leader of the Red Flame Sword section. Those people knelt on the ground and occasionally looked at Wu Yu with envious eyes. But more of it is still fear. Sacrifice. Wu Yu no longer thought about it. First of all, it was the golden eye of divine sword. The traces of the female sect leader's bloodline were still on this golden eye of divine eye. Wu Yu had to spend time erasing its traces first, so that this golden sword of divine eye could become the object without an owner is then sacrificed for refining. I have used this method to refining the silver charm and 100 ghost blood pillar before. The third time I used it, it was naturally smoother. Holding this golden sword, the divine eye on the hilt showed various emotions, which was a reflection of its intelligence, but it was very weak, just like a small animal. When Wu Yu controlled it, perhaps because Wu Yu was physically strong, and in his spiritual will, he possessed the will of the Monkey King, which was invisible and strong. Coupled with the shock brought by Zhang Futu, even this golden eye of divine sword was filled with fear. Wu Yu controlled it almost easily. After mastering it, I discovered that the magic weapon array in the God's Eye golden sword was more powerful than I imagined. In addition to the core God's Eye golden sword, there were 9 small arrays to assist it. Next is the 7-color divine fire sword. This sword was more violent and the fire was fierce when Wu Yu went to control it. Its 7-color flames spread to Wu Yu, burning Wu Yu's body, but now Wu Yu has the body of a Vajra, although the fire is extremely hot, but overall in fact, Wu Yu could not be injured. On the contrary, Wu Yu's magic power was overwhelming and broke through its defense. Although it was more difficult than the divine eye golden sword, Wu Yu finally controlled it. When the 7-color divine fire spread across Wu Yu's body, Zhang Futu once opened his eyes. Although it was only for a moment, Wu Yu felt that he was actually observing him. Not long after, Wu Yu wielded the 7-color divine fire sword in his left hand and the God Eye golden sword in his right hand. Both swords were slender. On one side, the golden sword energy was flowing horizontally, while on the other side, 7-color flames were rolling. He was quite powerful. If he looked carefully, these two psychic instruments worked together perfectly as if they were made for him. Coupled with the 100 ghost blood pillar and silver phantom, at least in terms of psychic magic weapon, he is almost complete. After getting it done, less than an hour actually passed, not even a day. That's enough. Wu Yu put away the 2 psychic weapons, then faced Zhang Futu and said to him. In fact, he could avoid calling Zhang Futu and calling him master, but it was really difficult to say it out loud. Oh, Zhang Futu seemed surprised. He stood up and looked Wu Yu up and down with an expression of approval. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. You seem to have given me more surprises than my other disciples. Zhang Futu sighed. Suddenly, an invisible sword appeared under his feet, lifting him up and letting him fly in the air. The sword, the vibration of the gang caused the roar of the entire biosphere. The disciples of the 2 sects were even more frightened and lowered their heads one after another, not daring to look at Zhang Futu. Suddenly, Zhang Futu pointed at the female sect leader of the Kunshan sword sect. Sword Immortal, the female sect leader was so frightened that she fell to the ground. Zhang Futu looked indifferent and said in a cold voice, "Give you a chance. If you can kill him in a quarter of an hour, I will leave you a way to live. Otherwise, he will be your fate." The last person refers to the leader of the Red Flame Sword sect. What? The female sect leader raised her head, her face pale and unbelievable. She thought that if she handed over the psychic magic weapon and the 2 people left, everything would be fine. Unexpectedly, this pagodan not only did not let her go, but actually wanted her. Deal with Wu Yu. Judging from the 2 people's attire and what they just did, could it be that Wu Yu is not this person's disciple? He wanted to give 2 psychic tools to Wu Yu, so why did he kill Wu Yu himself? For a moment, the female sect leader was confused and full of doubts. Before she could ask, Zhang Futu raised his sword into the sky with terrifying speed and disappeared in front of everyone in an instant. You only have a quarter of an hour. If I come back in a quarter of an hour and see that he is still alive, you will be dead. Zhang Futu's voice was as cold as the sound of death, constantly echoing in the ears of the female sect leader. Such a voice leaves no doubt as to how firm his words are and does not allow for any negotiation. Once she fails to do so, she will definitely be dead. At least Zhang Futu killed her old rival without any hesitation. At first, Wu Yu thought he heard wrongly. But when Zhang Futu left his side, he was sure that the other party had indeed made such a decision. Zhang Futu said to him with a smile, "Wu Yu, be careful, she is at the second level of the Golden Core realm. In other words, they are one level higher than Feng Shui and the others, and 2 levels higher than Wu Yu." Just this sentence, no explanation was given, and I didn't even know what he was going to do. Why, after giving himself a psychic weapon, did he let others kill him? Test yourself? Or, playing with yourself? Wu Yu was filled with anger, but he kept telling himself that he must calm down. Otherwise it will be more troublesome. Indeed, he has entered the real immortal battlefield from a remote place. Now is the most difficult period in his life. If he is not careful, who knows where he will die. After Zhang Futu left, the female sect leader suddenly stood up, and the others dispersed, only daring to watch the battle from a distance. Wu Yu noticed that the female sect leader's eyes were filled with hatred, which was for him. "Who are you to him?" she asked through gritted teeth. "Apprentice." Wu Yu said these 2 words, scaring the female sect leader back a step. Why did he do this? Her face was pale and her whole body was shaking. She couldn't figure out why Zhang Futu wanted to kill Wu Yu himself. Wu Yu shook his head and said, "I can't guess whether he is testing me. After all, I have just become a disciple. In this case, why not you and I escape separately? Maybe you can save your life." If they left separately, Zhang Futu might not be able to find her for a while. However, the female sect leader actually shed tears, her face full of fear and reluctance to die. She struggled and said, "No, I can't escape from his grasp. He said that the only way to survive is to kill you." She was afraid of Zhang Futu and could only place all her hopes on Wu Yu. "I am his disciple. If you really kill me, will he let you live?" Wu Yu asked. In fact, during this period of time, he was mainly thinking about what Zhang Futu was going to do. For this person, Wu Yu has no respect at all in his heart, and some is just disgust. Compared to the 9 immortals, Wu Yu hates him more. This person's behavior style and other things are completely opposite to Wu Yu. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 194. Hearing Wu Yu's words, the female sect leader cried and laughed, and said, "This is not a problem that I have to consider. I am a swordsman and a fish. The fate is really wonderful. It is so good that I fell into this narrow escape situation in the end. I am still not capable. I can't blame anyone else. However, the most direct reason is your appearance. Without you, how could I struggle to survive?" Her words still reminded Wu Yu that cultivation is robbery, and only by being strong can one be chivalrous. If you are not at the mercy of Zhang Futu. He didn't have time to think anymore, and the female sect leader didn't want to waste her most precious time. At this time, she took out an ordinary magic weapon, a long sword, which was about the same quality as the black and white Taoist sword. Without saying a word, she rushed towards Wu Yu. Surrounded by evil spirits, it was obvious that she had no choice in order to survive. Life and death are not under your control. Damn it, Wu Yu was annoyed. Although he didn't want to take action, the other party wanted to kill him. Fortunately, I recovered for an hour and my mana was basically restored, otherwise I might have been killed by one move at this time. Walk. The female sect leader's magical power swept over her, and she risked everything to survive. The majestic magical power made the ground roll, and countless sword shadows rushed towards him. Wu Yu hadn't figured it out yet, and he didn't want to have a life and death confrontation, so he replaced the golden sword with divine eyes and flew directly with the sword, soaring into the sky and escaping into the distance. However, the female sect leader was already pursuing him. Followed closely behind Wu Yu, screaming, "Don't leave! Don't waste my time! I only have this way to survive, please help me." Her struggle was so fierce that it left a deep shock to Wu Yu. "I can't imagine how angry I would be if I were her." Zhang Futu was playing tricks on her. Wu Yu must understand Zhang Futu's purpose, otherwise he will fall into his trap. But his mind at the moment is not on fighting. "Zhang Futu, you want to see my thrilling life and death battle. What is the purpose? To see my potential? My potential and strength were at least reflected in the battle with Huang Sheng. What does he want to see?" Recalling the details of the night he fought with Huang Sheng, Wu Yu was not stupid. He quickly thought that the time he fought with Huang Sheng was actually very short, and the most critical step was the body holding technique. With Zhang Futu's speed, Huang Sheng and I would probably have noticed the conflict as soon as it started, and he would have arrived at the scene. Why is he slower than my master? I didn't think much about it before, but now it seems that he must have arrived long ago, but he didn't save Huang Sheng. If he were at the scene, he might be able to feel my body holding technique more clearly. Only those who have personally experienced the body holding technique can feel it clearly. Others will only find it a bit strange. However, the time with Huang Sheng, Wu Yu was able to freeze the body for the duration of his breath. It was relatively obvious. If at that time, if Zhang Futu was nearby, he should have seen it. This is the immortal method of the great sage Kishan. Zhang Futu is immortal, and he will definitely be surprised. He should be curious, but maybe not sure. Want to see me perform it again on the edge of life and death? Wu Yu thought about it and could only explain it this way. Most likely, he didn't see it clearly last time because Wu Yu used the body holding technique from the very beginning. Most likely, I killed Huang Sheng because he saw the body holding technique. Not only did he not stop me, but he also didn't punish me. He even accepted me as his disciple. Thinking of this, Wu Yu broke into a cold sweat. This reasoning makes perfect sense. Since he is not sure, we must not let him know that this time, we must not use the body holding technique. Feng Shui had told him that he should be careful of everyone when going outside, even in the Shushan Immortal section. Although the Shushan Immortal sect had a vast inheritance, what Wu Yu got was particularly special and might be jealous of villains. Wu Yu himself knew even more how terrible everything he had was. After I figured it out, my heart felt clear. But the problem is, the female sect leader has already caught up with her. Her magic power is stronger than his own, especially in desperate state. How should Wu Yu deal with her? I have no enmity with you, and I don't want to harm you. This battle can no longer be avoided. It has nothing to do with grudges. It's just about life and death. You accept your fate. This matter is not up to you. The female sect leader had tears in her eyes, but she was unambiguous in her actions. Her sword cultivation skills were even more proficient than Feng Shui's. With one sword reaching the clouds, 3 golden sword energies suddenly transformed into golden tigers in the clouds and mist, rushing on the clouds, breaking through the clouds from 3 directions, tearing apart the clouds and mist, and coming with violent killings. Maybe she's right. Although there is no grudge, the one who controls this battle is not them, but Zhang Futu. Zhang Futu stipulated that only one of them could survive. Wu Yu didn't want to harm her 10,000 times, but he couldn't do anything about it. All the anger and disgust were transferred to the pagoda. Golden sword of the great Dao, the golden eye sword of God in Wu Yu's hand suddenly expanded, turned into a giant sword, cut through the clouds, and hit a golden tiger head-on, cutting off the tiger, and then quickly chopped off the heads of 2 other tigers. However, after being beheaded, each of the golden tigers turned into at least 100 golden sword energy, roaring like a torrential rain. What a powerful golden elixir technique! The transformation of this Tao technique was unpredictable, and Wu Yu suffered a loss the first time. Ordinary Tao techniques generally did not undergo such transformations. Although the golden sword blocked most of it, there was still a large amount of golden sword energy piercing his body. Incarnate Vajra. At that moment, Wu Yu suddenly transformed into a sitting Vajra Buddha in the sky, 6 feet high, extremely majestic and sacred, indestructible. The golden sword energy only left sword marks on it, but did not really hurt Wu Yu. This chapter is not over yet, please click the next page to continue reading. Boom! The Vajra Buddha was too heavy, and it fell from the sky. Before landing, it turned back into Wu Yu. This time was very thrilling. He was almost strangled to pieces. What a strong body! The female leader was very surprised, but she was faster and chased down. One attack after another fell like a storm, constantly forcing Wu Yu to the brink of life and death. I don't have the intention to kill, but the other party does. If this continues, I can't hold on for a quarter of an hour. Wu Yu knew it very well. Now he is in chaos. When he thinks that if he holds on for a quarter of an hour, she will die, he has obstacles in his heart. Perhaps, as she said, it was Wu Yu's existence that killed her. But, do I have to let her kill me? Wu Yu was unwilling. In fact, he knew that Zhang Futu would not let him die. But this person's mind is hard to figure out, so that's not certain. Boom boom boom. The female sect master's Taoist magic is extremely domineering. At this moment, the sky is full of golden raindrops, and the raindrops are falling, leaving Wu Yu with nowhere to escape. If he doesn't resist, he will die. There is no way. Everything is Zhang Futu's fault. Wu Yu has been forced to this extent and has no choice. Shock the Sky Sword. This is the Taoist magic of Tongtian Jiape Zhen Xiao. Wu Yu used the God Eye Golden Sword for the first time. He slashed down with the sword below. The Shock the Sky Sword shook the air invisibly, and a deafening roar sounded in a radius of 10 miles. At the position of the female sect master, the air suddenly shook, and the air was faintly transformed into gold, and it was a strongly vibrating gold, which locked the female sect master and suddenly exploded, blowing her away. Come again. Wu Yu's mana was still a little weak, far inferior to that of Jindan, so his sword moves were basically 2 swords at the same time. The 7-colored divine fire sword had already appeared in his other hand. Boom! The air shook violently again. Buzz! The 7-color fireball exploded on the female sect leader's body, and at the same time as the golden explosion, a huge roar blasted the female sect leader away. This was the first time Wu Yu counterattacked and hit the opponent. This was almost his strongest attack in the sword art now. If the opponent was not dead, then Wu Yu would have no choice. Using these 2 swords at the same time, his mana consumption was also quite large. If it was the first level of Jindan, the opponent would probably have died after 2 consecutive Zhentian swords. Boom! The female sect leader fell into the forest. There was no movement for a short while, but just when Wu Yu relaxed a little, there was a huge roar, and a golden figure rushed into the sky. Wu Yu looked closely and saw that the female sect leader had turned golden all over, as if she was made of gold. Like the golden body of the sun, her magic power and physical body had been greatly improved. The most prominent thing was that she had a pair of golden wings behind her, which were completely made of steel, and every feather was shining with gold. Bang! The feathers exploded and became thousands of golden swords, which were controlled by it. Wu Yu's back was shining. The other party had practiced Taoism for hundreds of years and could become the master of the section. That was not a joke. Once this trump card was used, Wu Yu was crushed again. Unless Wu Yu used the immobilization technique again, he would be doomed this time. The Zhentian sword could not kill her. You must not use the immobilization technique. If I use it, Zhang Futu's goal will be achieved. Next, I will be in greater danger. Wu Yu knew it very well. But the female leader, in order to survive and kill Wu Yu within a quarter of an hour, did not give Wu Yu time to think or escape. In that instant, she drove countless feathers and came to kill him on the spot, destroying everything she went to. The crisis of death fell on Wu Yu's head. Sorry, Wu Yu sighed deeply. He understood her, but he also had to live. Before he died, Wu Yu took out the soul-chasing electric talisman from the samurai bag. This was definitely something Zhang Futu had not expected. The soul-chasing electric talisman was originally used by Zhang Futu to save Huang Sheng's life, but it was confiscated by Wu Yu that night. He might have wanted Wu Yu to use the immobilization technique, but he did not expect Wu Yu to take out the talisman at this time. Ignite and activate with mana. The use of the talisman does not consume mana at all. The soul-chasing electric talisman is like having eyes. Wu Yu set his target on the female leader and closed his eyes. Boom boom boom. For a moment, the world shook. Wu Yu was thrown out by the impact and rolled several times. He didn't want to watch this scene. When everything was over, he stood up, and the female leader had disappeared. In less than 3 breaths, Wu Yu killed her with the soul-chasing electric talisman. There was a dead silence around. Okay, I'll take your sword. If that day comes, I will also avenge you. Wu Yu said to the female leader in his heart. It was not Wu Yu who killed her, but Zhang Futu. From the beginning, Zhang Futu did not leave her a way to live. Heaven-swallowing record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 195. By consuming a soul-chasing electric talisman, the female sect leader's life was taken away. For a time, the world became peaceful again and became silent. Zhang Futu certainly did not leave, so even though many people watched the female sect leader die in battle, they only dared to shrink back and never dare to appear again. Wu Yu was forced to kill someone today, and Wu Yu had already remembered this debt deeply in his heart. However, the secret battle with this pagoda was just the beginning and was far from over. It was obvious that the other party was eyeing him with covetous eyes. After it was over, Wu Yu calmly put away his swords, looked up to the sky, and said, "First, I have already killed her. Although I borrowed the soul-chasing electric talisman, after all, life and death have been decided. I can pass your test." Wu Yu followed his plan and first described Zhang Futu's purpose as a test for him. Concealing the matter about the body fixation technique. You don't need to be embarrassed. If you are really dissatisfied with me, I can go back by myself, Wu Yu said again. Haha. There was a burst of laughter from the sky, and Zhang Futu appeared in front of him in a blink of an eye, with a smile on his face and said, "Although it is indeed a tricky method, it does not prevent me from testing you. Yes, you are not that kind of pedantic person. You dare to kill people today, which is very pleasing to me." When he said this, it was difficult to tell whether it was true or false. Could it be that he really didn't covet the body holding technique, but just wanted to see if Wu Yu was as cruel and ruthless as him? "Ming Long, what do you think?" Wu Yu asked secretly. "You are so stupid, it's obvious," Ming Tong said lazily. "What's the meaning?" "He must have seen the body holding technique, but this guy is smart. He must be in the Tongtian sword section. He has inquired about your progress and changes in these days, and he must be coveting your golden cudgel, especially after seeing after the immobilization technique. He now guesses that you may have received a very high level of inheritance. Of course, the actual situation is that the inheritance you have received is much more terrifying than he imagined. Then why didn't he just kill me and seize it?" Wu Yu felt that he had enough opportunities along the way. Ming Long sneered and said, "In high-level inheritance, the inheritor must choose the inheritor. Otherwise, would it be so easy for outsiders to take it away? Even if you don't know where the golden cudgel is on you, he will kill him. You can't get it at all. He obviously knows this, and he is still in the guessing stage. I guess his idea is to keep you by his side, observe in detail, and find a way carefully. Only then can he get your treasure. Of course, he is a loser and there is no way he can get his hands on this Ruyi golden cudgel. According to Ming Long, this person will definitely be detrimental to him. Of course, he couldn't succeed even if he tried his best, but Wu Yu couldn't just tell him the truth directly like this. This is his deepest secret. You should have known that if you get the treasure, you will definitely cause trouble. This is how I died. If you want to become an immortal, the journey is dangerous. It depends on how you fight with this pagoda. Ming Long looked calm. Quanji, hanging high. Having just escaped from the clutches of the 9 immortals and fell into the den of thieves in this pagoda, Wu Yu could only smile bitterly in his heart. If I want to live in the Xuanhuan immortal sect, the most important thing is to hide my treasure. After all, the people who appear in the vast Xuanhuan immortal sect are all different from my master. Feng Shui is an alternative. Sometimes he takes morality very seriously. Zhang Futu is very troublesome, but after this attempt, at least before arriving at the Xuanhuan immortal gate, he should not mess around again. After messing with such a super strong person, Wu Yu can only hope that he will treat himself, be more patient. At least at this time, Zhang Futu was smiling all over his face. Maybe it was because he hadn't tested it out yet, but he also figured out that he was the only one who knew Wu Yu's details. When he returned to the Xuanhuan immortal sect, he had plenty of time to observe slowly. Maybe now, he is not sure whether what Wu Yu got is useful to him. He also knew that some high-level inheritances were indeed impossible to capture. Wu Yu, Zhang Futu, have always been very cautious when recruiting disciples. I must have people who are tough and decisive in killing, similar to me. From the past 10 days, it seems that you are fully qualified. Don't worry, this test is over. Now, let me take you back to Xuanhuan immortal section. As he said that, Zhang Futu stretched out his hand to grab, and an invisible suction force sucked Wu Yu onto his sword. He actually let Wu Yu stand on his sword. Ming Long sneered and said, "The attitude has changed for the better. He shows courtesy for nothing, and is either a traitor or a thief. It seems that he is planning to fight a long war with you. He will use a smile to make you relax your guard first. When he figures out the method, it will be the day you return to the West." Now there is no need for Ming Long to say it, Wu Yu already knows it in his heart. He was like a sheep, with the hungry wolf always by his side. Whoosh! Stand still. After Zhang Futu said these 3 words, he set off again in an instant. This time, it was Zhang Futu's speed. In an instant, his sword rushed up into the sky and submerged into the clouds. In an instant, the surrounding clouds and mist shot towards both sides. The high speed produced huge wind force. If Zhang Futu hadn't blocked it, in front, Wu Yu had already been thrown away. At this speed, even if Wu Yu had an indestructible body, Wu Yu's whole body would be cut like a knife. He still needed to use magic power to gather a layer of magic outside his body to protect himself. At the same time, he also needed to expend a lot of energy to absorb himself. On Zhang Futu's sword. I heard from Master that this pagoda is at least the 5th level of the Golden Elixir Dao realm. It's really amazing. I don't know, how many existences of his level are there in Xuanhuan immortal sect, the birthplace of sword cultivation. Just when Wu Yu was curious about this question, Zhang Futu, who was flying with his sword, was not affected by the huge wind at all. The clouds and mist easily pushed away and penetrated the sky. At the same time, he spoke in a calm tone, as if he was walking in the air. Wu Yu began to tell everything about Xuanhuan immortal section. Feng Xia, have you ever told you the details of Xuanhuan immortal sect? Wu Yu said, I just said that it was the birthplace of swordsmanship, and there were people who ascended to immortality. Zhang Futu sneered and said, this Feng Xia was exiled and eliminated by the immortal sect a long time ago. Naturally, he knows nothing about the immortal section. You are different from him. As my disciple of Zhang Futu, You are entering the Xuanhuan Immortal section. Before, you need to know something about the Xuanhuan Immortal section. You are too short-sighted now. If you enter the Immortal sect, you will inevitably make a joke and lose my face. It will take some time before you go back. I have nothing to do. Let me tell you, what is Xuanhuan Immortal sect? I'd like to hear the details. To be honest, Wu Yu was quite interested in this being known as the giant of Dongsheng Shenzhou. Zhang Futu spoke calmly and began, this Dongsheng Shenzhou is 1,000 miles of fertile wilderness. Within the endless territory, there are countless caves and blessed places, such as the Blue Waves and mountains. It is just one of the countless places where spiritual energy gathers. With the help of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, spiritual things grow, and wild beasts grow. They can all open their spiritual wisdom and transform into demons, let alone humans. People cultivate Taoism, cultivate immortality, and seek immortality. This has been the main theme of Dongsheng Shenzhou for countless years. Many changes have taken place, and people cannot remember the ancient legends. In today's world, among the millions of fertile lands, there are several places where the spiritual energy of the entire Dongsheng divine continent breaks out. It can be called a rare fairy land in the world. Among them, the highest peak of Dongsheng Shenzhou, Qingtian Shusan, is such a fairy land. Wu Yu listened intently without interrupting. Being able to become a disciple of the Xuanhuan Immortal sect undoubtedly means that you are one of the highest level genius cultivators in the entire Dongsheng divine continent. You have a more noble status than more than 99% of the cultivators. This Dongsheng, there are tens of thousands of cultivating sects in Shenzhou, some big and small, just like the two sects just now. As long as you show your identity as the Xuanhuan Immortal sect, no one will dare to touch you in this world. It is the land of immortals, synonymous with nobility. You come from such a remote place, and you can meet me and become the best cultivator. I can only say that you are really lucky. Just becoming a disciple of Xuanhuan Immortal sect, in the future, you will be able to walk sideways in this world. Zhang Futu spoke extremely proudly, and Wu Yu was also a little enthusiastic. Although he hated this Futu, he was indeed full of enthusiastic expectations for his Xuanhuan Immortal sect. That place is definitely a place where dreams can take off. However, this is not enough. After entering the Xuanhuan Immortal sect, you have to understand and pay attention to many things. Your Tongtian sword sect is like playing house. It is really ridiculous. A real super immortal sect must have rules. Strict and hierarchical, it operates like a machine, with clear rewards and punishments. It has strict laws, a complete promotion system, and a fair competitive environment. First of all, let me tell you what hierarchy is. Zhang Futu looked back at Wu Yu. Please tell me, Wu Yu said. Zhang Futu's gaze seemed to penetrate him, and he said, there are 3, 6, or 9 levels of people. Even your Tongtian sword sect has the levels of handyman, outer sect, core, and personal successor, not to mention the Xuanhuan Immortal sect. In the Xuanhuan Immortal sect, has a more strict level. The higher the level, the higher the resources and authority it possesses, and even the scale of punishment will be different. In other words, the more powerful you are, the more noble you will be. In the world of cultivating immortals, moral character cannot convince others, only realm and Taoism can overwhelm others. Wu Yu remembered that Feng Shui seemed to have said that Zhang Futu was a sword cultivator of the 4 major sword levels. Those 4 sword levels seem to be called Heaven and Earth Xuanhuan. It is said that you are a Huangjian level sword cultivator, Wu Yu asked. Zhang Futu smiled and said, yes, but in fact, in this Xuanhuan Immortal sect, the yellow sword level is nothing. You will know when you really have the possibility to come into contact with this level in the future. At this point, he paused and then said, actually, the highest level of the entire Xuanhuan Immortal sect is 2 levels. This division depends on whether you can go to the Qingtian Xusan. backslash U003 CE backslash U003 E backslash U003 CE backslash U003 F. Follow the official QQ account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information backslash U003 C slash E backslash U003 E backslash U003 C slash E backslash U003 E. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 196. Wu Yu didn't understand clearly. Is there anyone who can't go to the Qingtian Shu mountain? Is that still considered a disciple of Xuanhuan Immortal sect? Seeing his doubts, Zhang Futu felt proud and said, the entire Xuanhuan Immortal Gate is vast and boundless. It is 10,000 times as big as the Bibo Mountains. It is divided into two parts. The core part is the Qingtian Xuanhuan and Qingtian Xuanhuan incomparably tall, it is inserted at the top of the sky. It is said that it is connected to the heavenly court of heaven. It is the only place in the world that is connected to God. The closer it is to God, the richer the spiritual energy. It is the highest existence in our Xuanhuan Immortal section. All of them are on the top of Qingtian Shu Mountain. In addition to Qingtian Shu Mountain, the countless peaks surrounding Qingtian Shu Mountain under the mountain are another part. This part is wider. The closer you get to Qingtian Shu Mountain, the richer the aura is. Of course, even the border is 100 times more spiritual than your Bibo Mountains. We call this area the Mortal Sword Domain. In other words, Xuanhuan Immortal sect is divided into two parts, one is the Mortal Sword Domain and the other is Qingtian Xuanhuan. The blue sky of Shu Mountain is connected to the heaven, and the Mortal Sword Domain surrounds the blue sky of Shu Mountain. Not everyone can go to Qingtian Shu Mountain to practice. Therefore, the disciples of Shu Mountain Immortal sect are also divided into two major parts. Among them, the disciples who can only stay in the Mortal Sword Domain, no matter what realm they are all called Mortal Dan disciples. Don't underestimate Fan Dan disciples. Your headmaster Feng Shui and protector Lan Huayun are not even qualified to become Fan Dan disciples. Of course, there are many Fan Dan disciples every year because of their talents. Exhausted, expelled from the Mortal Sword realm. Hearing this, Wu Yu estimated that when he arrived at the Xuanhuan Immortal sect, he would definitely not be able to go to Qingtian Xuanhuan, and would have to be a Fan Dan disciple. However, he had a hunch that as the Xuanhuan Immortal sect was so huge, its internal mechanism must be much more complicated than the Tongtian Sword sect. Zhang Futu sighed with emotion. More than 90% of our entire Xuanhuan Immortal sect are all disciples of the Mortal Elixir. Some of these ordinary elixir disciples have become golden elixirs. Their advancement is slow and their talents have been exhausted. There are also people with amazing talents. Just because I am young and temporarily weak, my future will be unlimited. Wu Yu remained silent and waited for his introduction. He was hungry and wanted more. The howling wind around him could no longer attract his attention. Having said this, Zhang Futu smiled confidently and said, more than 50 years ago, I crossed the 5th level of the Golden Elixir Dao realm, developed a Dao divine power, and became a Yellow Sword level disciple. Successfully qualified to go to Qingtian Xuanhuan. From that moment on, I saw the real Xuanhuan Immortal sect. Speaking of these, there was infinite fascination in his eyes. What is the great power? Wu Yu heard a very unfamiliar word. Zhang Futu glanced at him, with a hint of contempt in his eyes, and said, you are still too far away from this, so don't ask any more. One day, you will naturally know, so just listen to me tell you about the 4 major sword levels. In this case, Wu Yu could only nod and not interrupt. Zhang Futu said, Qingtian Shu Mountain is infinitely high. From the foot of the mountain to the top of the mountain, it is actually divided into 5 areas. The higher up, the more core, the more the ruler's territory. We Xuanhuan disciples, most of our wishes, I just want to be able to climb to the top one day and see the beautiful scenery of the heavenly palace. Will you imagine the feeling of standing on the top of the mountain and looking at the real heaven? Zhang Futu started talking about the 5 areas. From the foot of the mountain up, there are 5 areas, namely the Yellow Sword Realm, the Xianjian Realm, the Earth Sword Realm, the Heavenly Sword Realm, and the top, a holy land called the Xuanhuan Immortal Realm. Let's not talk about the top of the Xuanhuan Immortal Domain, but let's talk about the following 4 areas. These 4 areas correspond to the 4 great sword levels. I am a Huangjian level disciple, and I can only stay in the Huangjian level, and so on. Only Xianjian level disciples can go to the Xianjian realm, and only the terrifying Tianjian level disciples can go to the Xuanhuan Immortal Realm. As for those who can stay in the Xuanhuan Immortal Realm, they are almost all masters, and they may even become. It's okay if you don't need to know about immortal characters, that's not a realm you can come into contact with in this life. In Wu Yu's mind, the shape of Qingtianshu mountain gradually took shape. From bottom to top, there were 5 areas. The bottom 4 corresponded to the 4 major sword levels. There was a strict hierarchy among the disciples. It was said that only disciples above the yellow sword level could accept disciples. Qualifications. These 4 major sword level swordsmen are pressed one after another. Just imagine, the person standing at the top must have the feeling of seeing all the mountains and small mountains at a glance. Weak people always have someone pressing on their heads. From what Zhang Futu meant, only by reaching the 4 major sword levels can one be considered a true disciple of Xuanhuan Immortal Sect, similar to the feeling of a core disciple. However, even the core disciples there have 4 levels, corresponding to different authorities. Wu Yu couldn't help but ask, how can I become a Huangjian level disciple, or even higher? He also hoped that one day he could climb Qingtianshu mountain to see the heaven. Zhang Futu smiled again, as if he was looking at an innocent child. After laughing, he said, heaven and earth are Xuanhuan. The yellow sword level is easier. You only need to reach the 5th level of the Golden Core Dao realm and master a Dao divine power. You can become a disciple of the Huangjian level. As for the Xianjian level, the Earth Sword level, and the Heavenly Sword level, those are too far away from you. You come from a small place and your background is too low. In any case, you are not born with enough talent to reach the Huangjian level. It's already pretty good. Since he didn't say anything, Wu Yu could probably guess that the Xianjian level should be the top level of the Jindan Dao realm. The Earth Sword level and the Heavenly Sword level are probably stronger than the Jindan Dao realm. They should be. Wu Yu, a cultivator in the Kanghai realm of Zifu, didn't know anything about this realm at all. He only knew a name at the moment. As for the Xuanhuan Immortal Realm, the core place, it is probably the most powerful existence in the entire world. Wu Yu guessed that Ming Long must have been a person of that level back then. At this time, Zhang Futu said, what you should know most is the Mortal Sword territory. You have to stay in the Mortal Sword territory for at least a long time to become a Fan Dan Dan disciple. Of course, even if you are a Fantasy Dan disciple, except for outsiders, they are also extremely noble cultivators. Any cultivator outside will respect you. The best sword cultivators in the world are all in Xuanhuan. Please also inform me in detail. When Wu Yu was talking to him, he kept omitting the word master and it was difficult for him to say it. Zhang Futu solemnly said, the Fanjian domain is very vast, covering more than 80% of the entire Xuanhuan Immortal section because Qingtianshu mountain is very high, the surrounding mountains are actually very high. The entire Xuanhuan Immortal sect is on a super plateau covered with ice and snow, there are also countless cave heaven paradises. Except for 1/10 of the special areas, there are a total of 99 sword palaces in the entire mortal sword domain. Each of the sword palaces among them, it is subdivided into about dozens of palaces. Each sword palace has a palace master, and the palace master is served by a Xianjian level disciple from Qingtianshu mountain. Within, there are dozens of hall masters, and each hall master is held by a yellow sword level disciple. For example, the 4 major sword level disciples can enter and leave areas lower than them at will. I actually spend a lot of time in the mortal sword territory, because I am the palace master of the mortal sword territory. The palace I am in charge of is called Pagoda Hall. You will stay in my Pagoda Hall for a long time and become a Fandan disciple of my Pagoda Hall. That is my territory and I will protect you. There is no need to worry about the future. Zhang Futu's words almost determined Wu Yu's future. Sure enough, Zhang Futu would leave him in a place where he could monitor him at any time. There are 99 sword palaces in the Fanjian domain, and each sword palace has dozens of halls. The context was immediately clear to Wu Yu. How many disciples are there in the Pagoda Hall? Wu Yu asked. Zhang Futu thought for a moment and said, there are about 300 people, all of whom are under my management and command. There are also 5 deputy hall masters, all of whom are at the 4th level of the Golden Cordeo realm. These 5 deputy hall masters are responsible for the respective channels, techniques, magical weapons, immortal spirits, talismans, and merits. I will be in charge of punishment. You will often deal with these 5 in the future. As my disciple, at least no one will bully you in the Buddha Hall. Not openly. Wu Yu remembered everything he had seen today. A Xuanhuan immortal sect was already very clear in his mind. What I said is actually just a general idea. When you get to the Buddha Hall, you will at least gradually understand many details, such as sword heart, achievements, trials, etc. Xuanhuan immortal, the door is very big. You will definitely be shocked when you go there for the first time, Zhang Futu said firmly. Wu Yu had no doubt at all. After all, it was the place that Feng Xiao was obsessed with. Next, during the long flight with the sword, Zhang Futu occasionally told Wu Yu some details about the immortal sect in Xuanhuan, very detailed, as if he were a real master. It's just that Wu Yu was extremely wary of him. The gentler the other party was, the greater his intentions were. It was difficult to grasp the time while flying in this cloud and mist. Wu Yu didn't know how much time had passed. It might have been a few months. The further west he went, the higher he flew, the colder he felt. Later, Wu Yu discovered that Zhang Futu was almost flying into the sky. The Xuanhuan Immortal Gate is located on the ice and snow plateau. Almost there. One day, Zhang Futu suddenly smiled. There are still endless clouds and mist ahead. Wu Yu raised his head and vaguely saw the vast world ahead, which already gave him a feeling of palpitations. This is just the distant periphery, but it has 10 times the aura of the Bibo Mountains. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003C/E /U003E /U003C/E /U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 197. It's about 3 days' journey from here to the Immortal Gate. 520 Novel Network read. Zhang Futu flew with his sword behind his back and said. As soon as he finished speaking, he passed through a cloud and mist. There were still 3 days to go. From a distance, Wu Yu could already see that deep in the distant sky, under the mist, there seemed to be a skyline connecting with the sky column. That pillar, just like the Ruyi Golden Cudgel, gave Wu Yu a deep shock. That is the highest peak of Dongsheng Shenzhou, Qingtianshu Mountain, Zhang Futu said proudly. I am afraid that as a member of the immortal sect of Xuanhuan, there is no one who is not proud of the Qingtianshu Xuanhuan. Zhang Futu's sword was heading diagonally upward, which showed that they were still rising. Even at this position, they were probably already far away in the sky. Looking at the huge blue sky Shu mountain, Wu Yu was shocked by the magic of heaven and earth, and yearned for everything on the blue sky Shu mountain. As time passed, he got closer and closer to the Qingtian Shushan mountain, so he could see more clearly. The Qingtian Shushan mountain was not a giant pillar, but a giant sword thrust out from the ground and thrust into the sky, like it is the finger of the earth, poking at the backbone of the sky, cold and chilling, as if it wants to pierce the sky and tear the sky apart. Because it is covered with heavy ice and snow, it looks more like a snow sword. You can imagine how steep this Qingtian Shu mountain is. Even so, the disciples of the four major sword levels are still cultivating and improving on the Qingtian Shu mountain, with the goal of reaching higher peaks. Fandan disciples from Fanjian domain are also fighting hard to reach the Qingtian Shu mountain. Although it was still far away, Wu Yu was already deeply impressed by the Qingtian Shushan at the first glance. This sword-shaped mountain peak is definitely the creation of heaven and earth. Otherwise, how could it have such aura? It is simply a masterpiece of God's. The Tongtian peak in the Bibo Mountains was probably modeled after this Qingtian Shu mountain. If it weren't for the heaven-given land, but there was an aura that attracted all the cultivators, Wu Yu wouldn't have had the will to rush to the top just by looking at it. Shock me, this is the divine sword given by God, the highest peak in the divine continent. The dream of countless ascetics, Zhang Futu said. As time went by, the closer he got, the bigger the Qingtian Shu mountain became in front of his eyes. In the end, when he was still about a day away, he could hardly see clearly that it was a divine sword rising from the ground. There was a mountain peak, and in front of Wu Yu was an endless wall, just like the boundary of the world, blocking him in front of him. Looking to the west, everything was blocked by this wall. The Fanjian domain surrounds the Qingtian Shu mountain. After getting closer, Wu Yu discovered that the Qingtian Shushan mountain was entangled with 9 layers of clouds from bottom to top. The 9 layers of clouds wrapped around the Qingtian Shushan mountain like a giant dragon, and the colorful clouds and mist spread in all directions. Don't look at the beauty of these 9-layered clouds. In fact, they are composed of Wujing Qi. If outsiders want to break into the Qingtian Shu mountain, they will be killed by the 9-layered cloud sword killing formation before they get close. Zhang Futu pointed at the gorgeous clouds. The 9-fold cloud said proudly. This must be a very advanced formation diagram, far beyond the 10,000 swords formation. It can't help but be like this. Outside the entire mortal sword domain, there is also the 99 layers of immortal sword formation. This 99-layer magic circle is not activated on weekdays. Once someone invades or a demon sneaks in, the formation will be activated and the entire Shushan immortal sect will be activated. It will be impregnable and no one can break it. However, in all my years of living, I have never seen any formation here activated. There is really no one in this world who dares to invade Shushan. Of course, these are only what I know. Over the endless years, our ancestors have laid out countless formations and left behind countless hidden inheritances. Only the supremes of the Shushan immortal domain know the entire Shushan immortal realm. How terrifying is the attack and killing formation of the sect. Wu Yu was deeply shocked. This Shushan immortal gate was truly a place of dreams. Even if Zhang Futu is eyeing it, it can't extinguish Wu Yu's enthusiasm and yearning for this place. Wu Yu also saw that on the Qingtian Shu mountain, there were at least tens of thousands of iron chains extending in all directions. On the Fanjian domain, it looked like they were fixing the Qingtian Shu mountain. In fact, Zhang Futu said that every chain was tied with a magic sword lay on the ground, with a demon hiding underneath. In other words, part of the mortal sword domain is a prison, where many monsters are imprisoned. As for what level of magical weapon the Excalibur was, Zhang Futu did not say. Another day passed, and we finally reached the scope of the mortal sword territory. Looking around, there is an endless world of ice and snow on the plateau. In front of us are endless mountains, which are countless times the size of the Blue Mountains. Surrounded by the blue sky, Shu Mountain, there are no boundaries at all. There are many tall peaks among them, some even reaching the Qingtian Shu Mountain. Of course, that is also the situation of Fandan disciples. The most amazing thing is that from this location, looking towards the sky, you can see many islands floating in the sky. It is said that this is the great power of the Immortal sect, which uses formation diagrams to lift the islands into the sky. Standing at this position, although you can only see the tip of the iceberg of the entire Xuanhuan Immortal sect, within this tip of the iceberg, there are countless sword energy, countless disciples flying with swords, which is very rare in the Bibo Mountains. It has become the most common thing here. You are at a low level now, so you can only look at the surface. If you have my ability, you will find that even on the cleanest land, there may be destructive magic circles. There are sword shadows flying everywhere, and sword energy everywhere. This is a world of swords. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Indeed, even if he couldn't understand it, Wu Yu could feel the terrifying sword energy everywhere, as if this was a forest of swords, and he was walking in this forest of swords. Looking around, thousands of mountains are covered with snow, and there are countless palaces and pavilions, countless towers, and countless sword-shaped buildings reaching into the sky. Whoosh whoosh. In the field of vision, there are probably thousands of disciples flying past with their swords. Here, Wu Yu looks so ordinary. His level is even lower than most people. Even Zhang Futu, a Huangjian level existence, was so ordinary. When he returned here, he kept a much lower profile and took Wu Yu through. Wu Yu never dreamed that one day he would come to the top holy land of spiritual cultivation in the divine continent. Everything in front of him was dazzling, even more shocking than the first time he visited the Bibo Mountains. All we can say is that this is what ordinary people imagine heaven should be like. It is so vast that you can only see the tip of the iceberg unless you climb the Qingtian Shu Mountain. Follow me to the Green Glass Sword Palace. My Buddha Hall is one of the 99 sword palaces, one of the palaces governed by the Green Glass Sword Palace. It is controlled by the Green Glass Sword Palace. It is said that the master of the Sword Palace is a Xianjian level disciple. Halls, sword palaces, Fandan disciples, the four major sword levels, this Xuanhuan Immortal sect is indeed more hierarchical. Just like the ice and snow in the sky, it is cold and harsh, and there is even a thick chilling atmosphere everywhere, which makes the newly arrived Wu Yu here couldn't help but be wary and fearful. In terms of the mortal sword territory, the area closer to the Qingtian Shu Mountain is the core. The Qingli Sword Palace is one of the more than 20 sword palaces on the outermost edge of the mortal sword territory. In terms of aura, it is naturally at the lowest level. It belongs to the edge of the mortal sword territory. Once you step into the mortal sword territory, it is the territory of the Qingli Sword Palace. Even so, the aura here, which is as rich as the white fairy mist, is extremely warm and full with just one breath, at least 100 times as rich as the Bibo Mountains. The paradise on earth is nothing more than this. They crossed a valley of ice and snow, and when they looked forward, there were two huge cyan swords in front of them, as if they were made of bronze. They were lying on the ground and were 100 feet high. A quarter of their blades were lying on the ground and on the hilts. Huge iron chains were hung, extending all the way to the mountainside of Qingtian Shu Mountain. Wu Yu knew that this was one of the two divine swords mentioned by Zhang Futu, and there must be evil demons underneath these two divine swords. And these two divine swords together form a gate of Xuanhuan Immortal Gate. Of course, it is also the gate of Qingli Sword Palace. Going far away, you can see about 30 monks in blue armor standing among the two swords, all carrying psychic weapons on their backs. They stood motionless in the wind and snow, staring at Zhang. Pagoda, this should be the gatekeeper of the Green Glass Sword Palace. Zhang Futu. Among the group of people, there was a tall man with a beard. He was the leader of the group and he saw Zhang Futu at a glance. Kang Mang, You're fine. Zhang Futu and Wu Yu arrived in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. The 30 or so people in front of them were all in the golden core realm. Now they all looked at Wu Yu with a scrutinizing gaze. Their sharp eyes and cold faces gave Wu Yu a kind of intimidation. Welcome back, but who is this? It seems that this is not the person you brought out, the monk named Kang Mang asked. Zhang Futu said without changing his expression, the disciple I brought out was unfortunately attacked and killed by demons and has passed away. As for this one, I discovered a rare genius in the Far East, so I accepted him as a disciple and brought him back Xuanhuan Immortal Gate. Na Kang Mang was half convinced and said, how could your disciple be killed by a demon? You must be very strong to be able to kill your disciple in front of your eyes. Zhang Futu said, that's not the case, but I was negligent and allowed the demon to meet him alone. From this, it can be seen that maybe among the immortal sect of Xuanhuan, Zhang Futu cannot be killed casually, so the Taike will take out the disciples who are not pleasing to the eye. I can't control this matter, but are you sure that this disciple who has not yet entered the golden core path is qualified to enter my immortal sect? If you want to enter the immortal sect, you have to pass the immortal sect's assessment through the normal way, Kang Mang asked suspiciously. Huangji unlevel disciples have the power to directly accept outsiders into the immortal sect as disciples, but there are only 4 places in total. He is currently at the 10th level of Qi condensation realm, but as far as I know, he is less than 20 years old, Zhang Futu said calmly. Less than 20? That's really good, Kang Mang nodded. He had been examining Wu Yu, and his eyes seemed to penetrate Wu Yu. Wan Tianyu is at the 8th level of the snow condensation Qi realm, but he has practiced Taoism for more than 50 years. Huang Sheng is in his 30s and is at the golden core Dao realm. At least in the Pagoda Palace, he is considered to have the best qualifications. The average Fan Dan disciple is less than 20 years old and is about the 8th level of Qi condensation realm. Okay, let's go in. Kang Mang nodded. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 198. After all, Zhang Futu is a Huangji unlevel disciple, and the review of Kingly Sword Palace is not very strict. However, when leaving, Na Kang Mang still asked Zhang Futu to report Wu Yu's specific background and various information as soon as possible, and Kingly Sword Palace would also review it. Of course, since Zhang Futu took the lead personally, there was basically no problem in the review. After passing the review, Wu Yu will officially have the status of a disciple of Xuanhuan Immortal Sect, and he will soar to the sky from then on. Wu Yu was directly accepted as an apprentice by a Huangji unlevel disciple, which was different from the ordinary way of entry. For ordinary people to get started, they naturally had to go through thousands of mountains and rivers, pass several rigorous assessments and inspections, and even check their identities and backs. Only those who pass it can become disciples of Xuanhuan Immortal Sect. Of course, the true pride of heaven are all the descendants of superiors. Those who were originally born on the Qingtian Shu Mountain became members of the Shu Mountain Immortal Sect as soon as they were born. Although they did not have the 4 major sword levels, they could still survive. In Qingtian Shusan. After entering the gate, it was already the territory of the mortal sword territory, but looking around, the land of ice and snow in front of us was still extremely vast. Buddha Hall, this way. Zhang Futu took Wu Yu deep into the green glass sword palace and headed towards the Qingtian Shu mountain. On the way, Wu Yu could vaguely see some splendid palaces, domineering sword energy, and even some mountains in the distance. It was the voice of a monk. He guessed that those places were a palace. For a hall like the Buddha Hall, there are about 2,000 in the entire mortal sword domain. If each hall has about 300 disciples, it can be calculated that there are a full 600,000 genius sword cultivators in the entire mortal sword domain. Duo, Wu Yu is here, which is indeed a drop in the ocean. The Fanjian domain is so vast that it would take dozens of days to reach the other end, but Wu Yu's temporary range of activities should only be the Buddha Hall. Soon after, a vast expanse of ice and snow mountains appeared in front of them, more than 10 times the size of the Bibo Mountains, with numerous peaks and strong sword energy. "This is my Buddha Mountains," Zhang said. "The temple of the Buddha has arrived. From this position, you can see several suspended islands when you look up. There are colorful clouds in the sky. To the west is the blue sky of Shu Mountain. Invisibly, countless sword energy is rolling, forming clouds and mists, whizzing past. The ice and snow are falling in front of my eyes, and the ice is frozen for thousands of miles. Follow me to the pagoda palace." The pagoda suddenly grabbed Wu Yu, flew with his sword, and quickly headed towards the core of the pagoda mountains. Let me tell you again, within the Shushan immortal sect, the territory of each palace is strictly divided. It doesn't matter. It's best not to go outside the Buddha mountains. Especially if you are still a newcomer. Once you go to other places, it's hard for me to come forward when someone bullies me, do you understand? Clear. There are many forbidden places in the mortal sword domain, hundreds of them, which Fandan disciples must not go to. I will give you some detailed plans later. The first thing you have to do is read them carefully, Zhang Futu warned. Wu Yu understands that it is the same as the sword rules and Blue Wave Mountains. Of course, this is 100 times more complicated. Wu Yu soon saw the highest peak on the Futu Mountains, which was the core Futu Mountain. The top of Futu Mountain is flat, and there is a Buddha hall on it. That is Zhang Futu's territory. He took Wu Yu directly to the front of the Futu hall, where there was a vast snowy land. Wu Yu had just stood firm and looked at the Buddha hall. This hall was extremely brilliant, 10 times as big as the Tongtian Immortal Palace. On the bricks and pillars, you could even see the existence of the magic circle, and you could feel it faintly. A large amount of spiritual energy was swallowed into the pagoda hall, making the spiritual energy in the pagoda hall reach a higher level. These formations must have been drawn by Zhang Futu himself. As soon as he arrived here, Zhang Futu looked into the void and said loudly, "Fantan disciples of Futu Hall, except for retreat and going out, quickly gather in front of Futu Hall within 10 breaths. He is the master here." As soon as he said these words, the entire pagoda hall was shaken. Wu Yu only felt his eyes flashing. Looking around, he saw countless peaks around him. Suddenly, there were hundreds of swords rising into the sky. Almost every sword, there were 1 or 2 disciples who quickly came to the Futu Hall. In less than 10 breaths, there were about 200 people, all with swords, arriving in front of Zhang Futu. They neatly bowed their hands and saluted, and said loudly, "I have met the master of the hall, welcome to the hall, the Lord returns." Among them, there are 5 middle-aged people standing at the front. They look more powerful and more powerful at first glance. They are obviously the 5 deputy hall masters. Although they are not at the Huangjian level, they are almost there. Very good. Zhang Futu enjoyed the feeling of being respected. At this time, many of the more than 200 immortal disciples turned their attention to Wu Yu. Wu Yu was also looking at them. He found that most of these people were young, and almost all of them had sex with Wan Tian. Almost the same, but basically they are already at the level of Jindan Dao realm and Feng Xiu Cliff. There are some who are older, about the same as Feng Shui, but they are basically at the second level or higher of the Golden Core Dao realm, and there are also very young ones, who are about the same age as myself, but they are also at the highest level of the Qi condensation realm. Sure enough, everyone is a genius. He is so aloof in the East, and when he comes to the pagoda hall, he only has a small advantage. However, those most outstanding geniuses will definitely reach the top 4 sword levels soon and will not stay here. Coming here is really nothing. Feng Xiai really thinks that his talent can stand out from the crowd here. However, including the time I have been practicing Taoism, it is only 3 or 4 years in total. It is indeed very powerful. Most of them have been practicing Taoism since they were young. Most people are very curious about Wu Yu. However, Wu Yu found that their eyes were very sharp. Perhaps because they had been in an environment like Xuanhuan Immortal sect for a long time, they all had a strong spirit of competition even if they did not deliberately do so. Their eyes were full of sword energy. At this time, Zhang Futu said, Huang Sheng went out with me this time, but unfortunately he was ambushed by a demon and lost his life. After these words were spoken, everyone murmured, but it didn't seem to cause much reaction. It seemed that most of them were relatively indifferent to Huang Sheng's death. Only one or two were very surprised and looked unhappy. Then, Zhang Futu turned his attention to Wu Yu and said, "This is the fourth disciple I have accepted. His name is Wu Yu. He grew up in the barren land in the easternmost part of the divine continent. He has a humble background, but he is better than all of you. His talent is less than 20 years old and he is already at the 10th level of the Qi condensation realm. From now on, he will become a member of our Futu Palace." Speaking of this, there was some uproar. These people should be more envious of Wu Yu for becoming Zhang Futu's disciple. Of course, there are also some with bad looks. Maybe they feel a little unbalanced after hearing the words humble origin. Most of them have passed numerous examinations. Different looks, different psychological changes, their strange looks made Wu Yu realize that this was no longer the Tongtian sword section. Dongsheng, give him an entry gift, Zhang Futu said to one of the deputy palace masters. Yes, the deputy palace master chuckled, took out a sumuru bag, threw it to Wu Yu, and said, "The things in it can relieve all your doubts and allow you to integrate into the Xuanhuan Immortal sect and become an official. Disciple, this is very complicated. You don't have to do anything this month, just focus on understanding everything in the initiation ceremony. This is the most important thing." "Thank you, Deputy Palace Master." Wu Yu accepted the introduction gift. This sumuru bag is heavy and must contain a lot of things. Zhang Futu was very satisfied with Wu Yu's calm performance and said, "There are only 30 peaks in Futu Hall vacant. From today on, Qianfu Peak is your territory. Wang Fu, Ziyan, Zhou Xian, you three come out and bear with your fourth junior brother." As soon as Wu Yu was given Qianfu Peak, Zhang Futu was among the crowd and summoned 3 of them. The one in the middle is a man with a strong back and a strong waist. He is very young, bald, wearing animal skins, and carrying a huge sword on his back. It is as long as his body and as wide as a palm. At first glance, it is a very good psychic weapon. This man has a strong aura of violence. Although he is a human, he looks like a wild bear standing here, which is very scary. It reminds Wu Yu of the black bear spirit in Xuanhuan Valley. "This is my eldest disciple Wang Fu. He was raised by bears since he was a child, but you must respect him, otherwise he will tear you alive, and there is nothing I can do about it," Zhang Futu introduced. Wang Kei's face was expressionless, and he really looked like a wild beast. In addition to Wang Fu, there is a woman and a man who do not seem to be kind. The woman is named Ziying. She has a smile on her face and seems to be very close to her, but in fact there is always a sense of distant distance. She asked, "Master, isn't our fourth junior brother Huang Sheng?" Although Huang Sheng is dead, this filial piety can only be regarded as the fifth. Zhang Futu glanced at her and said, "Shut up." From then on, no one dared to ask this question. "Fourth junior brother, I am your third senior brother, Zhou Xian. From now on, follow me and I will ensure that you have a good life." The last thin man, with a few red hairs between his black hair, smiled broadly at Wu Yu. Zhang Futu was very satisfied with his performance and said, "Okay, let's disperse. Zhou Xian, you take your junior brother to Qianfu Peak and look after him for me. After all, he has just started." Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Disciple promises to complete the task. Raise junior brother to be fat and white." "It's gone." Zhang Futu said one word, and everyone dispersed in a hurry, all going to do their own things. Even Zhang Futu glanced at Wu Yu one last time, and then flew with his sword, as if heading towards the Qingtianshu mountain went to Huangjianyu. That was the place where he stayed most often. This pagoda palace was usually managed by 5 deputy palace masters. In the blink of an eye, only Zhou Xian and the 4 sword cultivators who followed Zhou Xian were left here. They all looked at Wu Yu with playful smiles, and then Zhou Xian said, "Master actually gave Huangsheng's Qinfu Peak directly to my junior brother. I'm really envious. Junior brother, senior brother will take you to Qianvold Peak now and let you know more about it. A few friends, everyone is familiar with me, come with me." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 199. A total of 5 people looked at Wu Yu with warm faces and smiles. Others including Zhang Futu disappeared. Zhang Futu was said to have returned to Qingtianshu mountain, but Wu Yu guessed that he might also be watching him in the dark. The 3 senior brothers in front of them looked familiar. They stepped forward and put their hands on Wu Yu's shoulders. They smiled and said, "Our master is really irresponsible. He was also the same when he first accepted me. Leave me here, go to the Yellow Sword realm, and wait a full year before showing up here again." He doesn't usually spend much time in the Buddha hall. Wu Yu didn't like this man very much because he was not tall and had to put his arm around his shoulders. He has been very vigilant since he came here, and Zhou Xian's smile is not as sincere as Mo Shishu's. Zhou Xian patted his thigh and said, "That's for sure. Master has finally become a Huangji unlevel disciple. How can he stay here? At the end of the year, it would be nice to see him once. If nothing else, I'll give it to you, senior brother. Go to Qinfu Peak. Huangsheng is gone, Qinfu Peak is in such a good position, I really envy you." As he said this, he called to the other 4 people. Everyone present had a long sword, a psychic weapon, and they were flying with the sword under their feet. These 5 people turned out to be in the Golden Elixir realm. Wu Yu secretly observed them and understood something in his heart. These people were all young, about Wan Tianyugzio's age. However, they had all achieved the Golden Elixir, and their cultivation level was not weaker than that of Feng Xia, and they were just the most ordinary people here. Fandan disciple. What does this Xuanhuan immortal sex real super genius look like? Wu Yu couldn't help but yearn for it. Zhou Xian and the others were about to leave when suddenly someone said, "Zhou Xian, grab your junior brother. He hasn't reached the Golden Elixir realm yet. Can he still fly?" In fact, they had already set off some distance by this time. "Oh, I remembered, haha, junior brother." As soon as Zhou Xian said this, Wu Yu had already followed them with his sword. The smooth way he handled the sword simply surprised Zhou Xian and the others. "Why can you fly with a sword? Isn't it because of condensation of qi?" Zhou Xian said, a little depressed. It sounded like he had originally planned to let Wu Yu chase them on the ground. Wu Yu said calmly, "Because of my special immortal roots, I was able to wield a sword very early. Could you please lead the way, senior brother?" In fact, he was too lazy to deal with these people. This vast Xuanhuan immortal sect had more things to attract him. At this time, he was hungry for this huge group. "Okay, just follow me, follow me." Zhou Xian and a few others looked at each other and suddenly accelerated. For some reason, they seemed to want to tease Wu Yu, so this acceleration was directly at full speed. The wind and snow cliff are even faster. Wu Yu had no intention of getting entangled with them, but he kept following them. In the ice and snow, the mountains were sneaking, and a few rays of sword light pierced the clouds and mist with a whooshing sound, passing by, but no one could be seen. Zhou Xian looked back and saw that Wu Yu was following him. He couldn't help being surprised and said to himself, "This kid is still in the qi condensation realm. How can he wield a sword so fast? He's obviously a newcomer, but if you haven't been clever enough, you have to give him some power and influence. Otherwise, he won't take your 3 senior brothers seriously. A female swordsman next to him said coldly. We know who Huangsheng is. Master has been disappointed with him for a long time. Wu Yu appeared out of thin air and took Huangsheng's position. Since we have been together for so long, we should prioritize him and let him respect him. Mi Zhouxian said secretly. Arrive. In the blink of an eye, Qinfu Peak arrived. Wu Yu followed Zhouxian and the others to land. At the same time, he was also looking at this mountain that belonged to him. To be honest, the peak of Shushan Immortal sect was not lively. Without the handyman disciples, there would only be Wu Yu in the future. Myself here. Now this is a mountain covered by ice and snow, but there are still strong and thick cedars, and various plants have grown up in this mountain. Perhaps it is because they have absorbed spiritual energy. The plants here are very vigorous and even spiritual. There are even flowers in the snow, all over the mountains and plains, very beautiful. Among the snowy mountains and cedars, where the aura is strongest, many palaces and pavilions were built. Wu Yu and others landed in an open space on Qinfu Peak. Wu Yu didn't want to spend more time with this group of people, so he handed over his hands and said, "Thank you all, senior brothers. Wu Yu is new here and needs to get to know the Immortal sect better, so let's go in first." Zhou Xian was indeed not a kind person. He stepped sideways and stopped in front of Wu Yu. He stared wide-eyed and said, "Junior brother, this is not right. Several senior brothers and sisters have worked hard to get you here, and you are rushing like this. Are we too rude to leave? This is Shushan Immortal sect, a place with rules, not your valley, understand?" Wu Yu was not a timid person. Even if the other party wanted to pester him, he did not back down and asked, "Senior brother, what do you think I should do to be polite?" Zhou Xian and the 4 people around him looked at each other, and everyone burst into laughter. Zhou Xian said, "Actually, it's not that we are making things difficult for you, but that the Immortal sect has its own rules. We all went through this process when we first entered. This is our tradition. We kindly send you here. As a new junior fellow student, you have to express yourself in a way so that we can get along more easily in the future. Do you understand?" Zhou Xian said it in a matter-of-fact way, as if it were true. Wu Yu understood. It turned out that he was blackmailing him because he was just starting out, had low strength and age, and had no powerful background. He asked with a smile, "Senior brother, what do you think is the best way to express yourself?" In fact, he also understood that there would always be people who were dissatisfied if he appeared out of thin air and took Huangsheng's place, especially Zhang Futu, who said that he was from a humble background. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Zhou Xian was very happy to see that he still recognized him and said, "It's very simple. In your introduction gift, there are 5 Yuan Jindan. You can add 10 more to make 15, and give them to each of our 5 brothers and sisters 3 pieces, treat it as a small gift, and that's it. From now on, senior brother will definitely protect you and not let others bully you." Wu Yu is reluctant to use any of Yuan Jindan now. A Yuan Jindan is refined from precious fairy spirits, and it must be a fairy with spiritual patterns. It contains considerable medicinal power. Powerful, almost hundreds of times more powerful than the qi condensing pill. 15 pieces. You are really a lion. Senior brother Zhou, you and I are both disciples of the palace master, but you join forces with outsiders to extort your own junior brother. Aren't you afraid of the palace master's punishment? Wu Yu retracted his smile and his face turned cold. Coming down, he had a hunch that he would not be able to escape today. Hearing Wu Yu's words, they laughed so hard that they couldn't stand up straight, as if they had heard a top-notch joke, and even their expressions were twitching. The palace master will not come back within a year when he returns to Huangjianyu this time. You are too naive. As for the deputy palace masters, they are all busy with their own affairs. Who cares about you, idiot? Newcomers are newcomers. It is said that you come from the Far East, a very barren place. No wonder you don't even want this. With such a good place as Huangjianyu, master only comes here to visit occasionally. Do you really think become master's disciple and reach heaven in one step in Xuanhuan immortal sect? They laughed fiercely at Wu Yu's ignorance. Each one laughed louder than the other, and they almost rolled on the ground. On the first day I came to Xuanhuan Xianmen, I didn't expect to meet such a person. This is the edge of the immortal sect and the place with the greatest competition. As the saying goes, the forest is big and there are all kinds of birds. I shouldn't add my impression of Zhangfutu and these people to the immortal section. One thing is undeniable. The internal competition of the super sect in Shenzhou must be 10,000 times greater than that of the Tongtian sword section. As soon as I became the master's disciple in the Tongtian sword sect, I almost reached the top. But here, the road ahead is long. Who knows if there's any chance of moving forward? The key is to be down to earth, dedicated to cultivating immortality, and at the same time, not afraid of fighting. His inner will was firm and would not waver at all, so when the other party laughed at this moment, he said categorically, "It is impossible not to have even one Yuan Jin Dan. If you leave now and don't bother me, we will still be friends in the future. Otherwise." Hearing this, Zhou Xian and the others laughed even more happily. In the fairy mist, they were wearing sword robes, each with majestic appearance and heroic appearance, but at this time they looked ugly. "Otherwise, what do you want?" Zhou Xian asked. Naturally, Wu Yu would not take action first. He gave Zhou Xian a cold look and headed towards the palaces at Qinfu Peak. "You dare to leave?" Zhou Xian's face turned cold instantly, and he motioned to a few people next to him, and everyone was immediately angry. Without saying a word, the four people pulled out the psychic magic weapon, and with a few swishes, they stood in the four directions, blocked Wu Yu's way, while Zhou Xian stood with his arms folded. Behind Wu Yu, he said, "It's just 15 Yuan Jindan. I gave it to you when I first started. Why are you so stubborn? Wu Yu, I'm warning you at the end. You've broken the rules. For these Yuan Jindan, it will be your big loss to have a relationship with me, your senior brother. In fact, this is not the rule of the entire Xuanhuan immortal sect, but a phenomenon in some halls. For example, in the Futu Hall, Zhou Xian obtained a lot of Yuan Jindan by bullying the disciples who had just started. Most people dare to be angry but dare not speak out. The deputy palace master is unwilling to take care of things, and Zhangfutu is never here. Besides, he is still Zhangfutu's disciple, so for this kind of thing, the newcomers basically hand over their belongings and tolerate it. Wu Yu just pretended that he had not heard what he said and moved forward. This angered Zhou Xian and made him lose face. It's just a matter of qi condensation. He's so ignorant of good and evil. He's really stupid. Don't move. Let me, the senior brother, discipline him. Zhou Xian took out a long sword. They were all the most orthodox sword cultivators. In terms of sword art, it can be said that it has a long inheritance. Whether it is the posture of holding the sword or the fabrication of the magic formula, it has the feeling of ancient orthodoxy. Whoosh! Zhou Xian struck with the sword. At that moment, Wu Yu's eyes suddenly turned cold, and his whole body instantly held two swords in his hands. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ public account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information. /U003C /E /U003E /U003C /E /U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 200. In the left hand, there is a 7-color divine fire sword and a 7-layer magic weapon array, burning 7 kinds of flames. The multiple flames collide, and the natural explosive power is super strong. In the right hand, there is a divine eye golden sword and a divine eye golden formation. It is extremely mysterious. Everything the sword light touches is made of metal. Wu Yu had been prepared for a long time and entered a fighting state instantly. This Zhou Xian's strength is probably stronger than Huang Sheng's. Wu Yu probably knew that the opponent should be at the first level of the Golden Cordeo realm, and had not yet reached the second level, so it was a level he could deal with. However, the opponent had a large number of people, so he had to strike first to gain the upper hand. So the moment Zhou Xian made his move, he turned around suddenly and drew his sword at a speed far faster than Zhou Xian. The other party only thinks that I am at the 10th level of the Qi condensation realm, so they despise me. This move is only effective for the 10th level of the Qi condensation realm. Wu Yu knew this well. Zhou Xian pierced with his sword, and the sword light evolved into 8 water snakes, entwining them. The water snakes spit out snake letters, which turned out to be the sharp edge of the sword. At this moment, Wu Yu suddenly turned around and struck out with both swords almost at the same time. Sky-shaking sword. When it comes to Taoism, this is almost the strongest ordinary Taoism. A sword struck Zhou Xian in front of his eyes, and the air shook and tore apart. With a swing of the sword, he was instantly engulfed by 7 color flames. Boom boom. On Zhou Xian, there were 2 violent explosions in succession, almost at the same time. You can see a lot of gold trapping Zhou Xian, and suddenly exploded into sword light all over the sky. The 7 layers of divine fire were entangled under the sword light, and were also included in the power of the sky-shattering sword. The explosion instantly burned Zhou Xian into flames. The power of the explosion instantly lifted him away and landed at the top of a high mountain. Only screams could be heard along the way. Wu Yu defeated the careless Zhou Xian almost instantly. It would definitely take some time for the opponent to recover from such a trauma. Deal with. 2 people went to rescue Zhou Xian, and the remaining 2 stopped Wu Yu. However, at this time, their eyes were shocked and they were evasive. Perhaps because they were suddenly frightened by Wu Yu, neither of them took action at this time. "You're hiding your strength," one of them almost screamed. Wu Yu was too lazy to tangle with them and said with a smile, "Why not? Do you want to tell you that I have killed even the 2nd level of the Golden Cordeo realm? The Palace Master can testify. Do you want to ask him? Or do you want to talk to him?" Dealing with one end. Wu Yu's words didn't sound false, and because he had just made a shocking move, the 2 people looked at each other for a moment. "Wu Yu, if you wait, you will hurt Zhou Xian. With his personality, you will have no peace in the Buddha temple." The man did not dare to take action and only spoke harshly. Of course, if the remaining 4 of them attack together, Wu Yu thinks he will be tortured. However, the momentum cannot be lost. Facing the other party's threat, he put away the magic weapon lightly and said, "Okay, then I will beat him until he kneels down and let him see whether the 3 Yuan Jindan is more important or his life." You're so crazy." The 2 looked at each other, which really shocked Wu Yu. Zhou Xian had a higher status and was their head. Now that Zhou Xian was seriously injured, they had no sense of restraint. They put down their harsh words and said, "He went to find Zhou Xian, but he didn't come back." Wu Yu waited for a while and saw no one came to retaliate, so he smiled. It seems that these people are just tough-looking, paper tigers, bullying the newcomers. Although Zhou Xian is only about 30 years old, more than 20 years younger than the others, he has been practicing Taoism for more than 10 times as long as Wu Yu, so Wu Yu still doesn't take this person seriously. He was speeding around Qinfu Peak, understanding and becoming familiar with his future territory. Qinfu Peak is very big, 10 times higher than Qishan Peak, and 10 times larger in scope, but he is the only one there, and sometimes he feels quite lonely looking at the endless ice and snow in the sky. However, looking to the west, the blue sky and Xuanhuan mountain that penetrated the sky still had a terrifying attraction, stirring the blood in his heart. If you don't go to the Qingtianshu mountain, for me, it doesn't count as entering the immortal sect. He has set a lofty goal for himself. To become an immortal, he must climb up the Qingtianshu mountain. After getting familiar with the place, he built a wooden house at the highest point on the top of the mountain, which was roughly similar to the wooden house where Sun Wuodao once lived. Then he buried a piece of Sun Wuodao's clothing on the hillside behind the house and erected a tombstone. Poured wine on him, and after defeating him, he returned to the wooden house. This wooden house in the snow seems a bit lonely. However, it cannot be denied that the spiritual energy here is really rich, and the mana can increase with each breath. The spiritual energy turns into a thick fairy mist, lingering around, turning this place into a fairyland. Wu Yu sat down cross-legged in the wooden house, opened the introduction gift of the Meiji bag, and then began to count the contents inside. Sure enough, there are many and they are very complicated. There are elixirs, talismans, fairy spirits, books, etc. Wu Yu didn't take a closer look, but there was already one most important thing that caught Wu Yu's attention immediately. It was a small bronze sword, about the length of a finger, with complex patterns carved on it, vaguely resembling the blue sky and Shu mountain. This thing is very mysterious, but I can't understand it. Holding the cold little sword, he could roughly experience the wonder of the little sword. It seemed that there was a magical array inside, but he couldn't explain clearly. Is the small sword a magical weapon? Obviously, it has no attack power and does not seem to have the function of a me bag. There is a piece of paper that writes the efficacy of this small bronze sword. This small bronze sword is called the Disciple Talisman. It is made by the top beings of Xuanhuan Immortal section. It is the most important thing for every Xuanhuan disciple. Only those who possess the Disciple Talisman can be regarded as Xuanhuan disciples. In the introduction, the nature and specific origin of the Disciple's Talisman was not mentioned. Wu Yu was only told that once the Disciple's Talisman was pierced into the body, the Disciple's Talisman would disperse into particles and integrate into every position of the body, completely integrating with itself. Only after planting the Disciple Talisman can one be considered a true disciple of Xuanhuan, because only after planting it will be recognized by various magic circles in the Xuanhuan Immortal section. There are some places that only Xuanhuan disciples can go to, and Wu Yu can go there, otherwise he will be subject to many the magic circle automatically attacks. In the future, when returning to the Immortal sect from outside, this Disciple Talisman is also the only basis. Without the Disciple Talisman, unless it is brought by a disciple of the 4 major sword levels, you will not be able to enter the Immortal sect. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. After the Disciple Talisman is planted, only the high-level disciples of the Immortal sect can destroy it. Neither themselves nor other outsiders can destroy the Disciple Talisman, let alone take it out. Once the Disciple Talisman is planted, the Immortal sect will also it can control the life and death of the disciple. In this way, this disciple's talisman is a bit like a part of a magical weapon. At least outsiders cannot take the disciple's talisman and pretend to be a Xuanhuan disciple. Before Master was expelled, the disciple's talisman had been destroyed by the higher UPS. Wu Yu played with the small bronze sword in his hand. He knew that once he inserted it into his flesh and blood, he would be a disciple of Xuanhuan for the rest of his life, unless he was also expelled from the school. Just like what was written on the piece of paper, the disciple's talisman enters the body and he will be born in Xuanhuan for the rest of his life. Because of this, Wu Yu was a little scared. You can't regret the decision you made when you come here. Without this disciple talisman and Zhang Futu with me, I would be an outsider wherever I go. The various hidden magic formations of this Xuanhuan Immortal sect are no small matter. He pinched the small bronze sword, with intense eyes, and stabbed it into his chest. There was a stinging pain, and the disciple Fu was submerged in it. It is worthy of being the most important status symbol of Xuanhuan disciples. My indestructible body cannot be penetrated by ordinary psychic weapons, but this disciple's talisman is so sharp. After the sting, Wu Yu saw the lines of a small bronze sword gradually appearing on the wound. However, the actual disciple talisman turned into a blue stream the moment it entered the body. As the blood flowed throughout the body, it was completely integrated with Wu Yu. In this life, except for the Xuanhuan immortal sect to exile him, he and Xuanhuan have already indivisible. This disciple's talisman entering the body means that a real new beginning has begun. Wu Yu smiled faintly, experiencing the change in his heart, and he was looking at other things in the initiation ceremony. In terms of elixirs, there are 5 Yuanjin elixirs. 2 poison pills. 2 cloud pattern pills. The poison elixir is said to be able to neutralize the poisonous spells of some demons, while the cloud pattern pill is made from the muar fruit, a fairy with spiritual patterns. The cloud pattern fruit has a healing effect. Auxiliary materials: after practicing the elixir, the effect will be better. In terms of talismans, there are exorcism talisman, mist talisman, and 10,000 sword talisman. The exorcist talisman can expel demons, the mist talisman can create a wide range of fog, making it easier to escape, and the 10,000 sword talisman is the most powerful, as it can release thousands of sword energy and shoot out to form a lethal force, although it is not as good as the soul-chasing electric talisman. But it's also awesome. As for fairies, there are 3 fairies with a spiritual pattern. The spiritual energy is overflowing and makes people greedy. However, Wu Yu can't make elixirs yet, so he keeps them for now. Finally, there are the books. This is an especially important thing besides the disciple talisman, because it contains everything Wu Yu wants to know. Wu Yu counted and found 4 books in total. Among them, the first one is Xuanhuan sect rules, which is the same as the Sword Dao sect rules. It contains hundreds of rules that Xuanhuan disciples must strictly abide by on daily basis. It is much more complicated than the Sword Dao sect rules. Although Wu Yu didn't really want to know, if he wanted to survive in this Xuanhuan immortal sect, he had to know what was allowed and what was forbidden. The second book was Biographies of the Divine Continent. Wu Yu was very interested in this book because it was the real encyclopedia of the Dongsheng Divine Continent. After flipping through it, he found that most of the stories about the Dongsheng Divine Continent were recorded in it. The top-level immortal cultivation sects such as Xuanhuan Immortal Sect and Shangyuan Dao Sect are very detailed and involve a lot of history. Even the Immortal Cultivation Sect has more than 1,000 records. In addition, there are many introductions to demons, Taoism, fairies, elixirs, etc. Wu Yu found that as long as he finished reading this book, he would probably know more about the land under his feet than Ming Long. The third book is Records of Immortality. This book is not thick. Wu Yu flipped through it and was even more shocked because it contains detailed records of all the realms before becoming an immortal, as well as every realm, and even every small level. After reading all the details, he would probably know what the Jindan Dao realm and the Zifu-Kanghai mirror were like. The fourth book is Yin Dao Lu. This book is also very important. It records the entire mechanism of Xuanhuan Immortal Sect, about forbidden areas, trial areas, many places like Duobao Valley and Daodao Pagoda, about the annual disciple assessment, the ranking list among the disciples, the acquisition of resources, the introduction of the 99 sword palaces. Everything is very detailed, and it even mentions something called merit, which is for everyone what Xuanhuan disciples need to understand most. You need to read this book to be a qualified Xuanhuan disciple. Wu Yu finally understood why the vice prince asked him to do nothing for a month and study first. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003C/E/U003E/U003E/U003C/E/U003E.